What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today we will be reviewing Thor. So without further ado, let's get into it. So in terms of character development, honestly, Thor's character development, there's not a lot of it, to be honest. He goes from being like a spoilt rich guy to taking some responsibility and understanding that he's not as self-entitled as he thinks he is. It's okay development. I mean, to be honest, I've seen it done loads so in other films, so it weren't exactly outstanding. It's not very memorable. It's okay development. He certainly is a different character at the end of this film than he was when it started, so that's a good thing. So I'd give character development about a 5 out of 10 because, to be honest, there's not a lot of development done with the characters. The performances are also a mixed bag. I wouldn't say there are any bad performances in this film. Chris Hemsworth is good as Thor, however, he is not as comfortable in the role as he seems to be in the successive Thor and Avengers films. In this one, he seems to be still finding his feet. Tom Hiddleston is probably the best performance in this film. He's really good as Loki, the villain, and he's just a joy to watch on screen. Natalie Portman is a really good actress. However, they give her nothing to really work with here, except for the relationship with Thor, which, yes, they have good chemistry, however, it's just not focused long enough. So the performances are good, I'm not saying that. However, there's no real standout ones except for Tom Hiddleston. So I'm going to give the performances a 6 out of 10 because they're all pretty standard. The effects are probably the best element of this film. You know, they come from the MCU, so the effects, of course, are of a high standard. I like all the effects done with Asgard. I think it's very unique and they did a really good job showing Asgard as it is. So I would give the effects an 8 out of 10 because honestly, I can't really fault them. I think they could have been a bit more imaginative with some of the effects in Asgard. However, for what we were given, the effects are pretty good. The story and writing is probably the biggest problem for this film because despite Thor having the opportunity to be set in space, obviously at the time Marvel were concerned that films couldn't be entirely set in space, so we spend a lot of the time on Earth where there's this romance between Thor and Jane Foster. I find the Earth stuff pretty boring. It's more interesting on Asgard where Loki is and all of that. I find that a lot more interesting. And as I've said, you've seen this storyline so many times. It's the hero. He's got to get over his arrogance. He's got to take some responsibility. He's got to understand he can't do everything himself. So you've seen that before. And of course, you know that he's going to understand that in the end. So you've just seen this story so many times. It's not exciting. It's just a standard script. It's like they took the most stereotypical story they could find and then just put it on the screen. And while it works, I'm not saying it doesn't work, it is using just a typical formula. So there's nothing unique about this film. And especially when you consider Thor Ragnarok was very, very unique. This film feels like a completely different universe to Thor Ragnarok because it's quite dull. It's just a typical script with a typical story. So I'm going to give the story and writing a 5 out of 10 because it's just not exciting. It's not unique. So for this film's special recognition, I'm going to talk about the style and tone of this film. This film is very Shakespearean. You can clearly see the directors going down that route. You've got Anthony Hopkins there, you've got Tom Hiddleston, who have both done Shakespeare roles before. So it's very Shakespearean in a way. The main problem with this film, and it's more because of Ragnarok, this film feels very redundant. It feels like a totally different style to Ragnarok. Chris Hemsworth's Thor is very different in this film. There are some humorous lines, however, he's a lot less humorous and jokey in this film than he is in Ragnarok. And that's one thing I struggle with this film. I think because Ragnarok is so different to this film just feels kind of the odd one out. It feels like a completely different universe, a different Thor character. So I'm going to give the special recognition a 4 out of 10 because it's a consistency which is not exactly the film's fault. However, it just feels like a completely different film to the other 4 films. So in conclusion, Thor is a standard MCU film. It's one of those films which is not really very memorable, and despite if I'm doing an MCU movie marathon, I don't really watch it on its own. And that's why Thor gets a well-deserved 29 out of 50, which gives it a grade 4 ranking. Honestly, this film is probably one of the weakest in the MCU. It's not one I will watch very often. I just find it a bit boring and a bit bland. So thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed my Thor movie review. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And I will see you in another one. See ya!